Hi everyone, my name is Steve Holgate and I'm thinking of all the kids who are kept inside on days like this with our emergency going on and not everybody can get outside and play like they usually do. And so I've decided what I'm going to do is post a little story. I'll be reading a book to you. The book is Madeline. One of my favorites when I used to read it to my two sons. They enjoyed it a lot too. It's Madeline by Ludwig Bemelens. Now it's a funny thing here on this video, and I don't know what quite to do about it, but everything's a little backwards. But that doesn't matter very much because the fun is in the paintings and in the story itself. And I'll be telling you that story and showing you the paintings. And Madeline is a lot of fun, partly because it's set a long time ago. It's set more than 80 years ago in Paris, in France. And one of the fun things about it is that Ludwig Bemelens, who wrote the story, has some very nice paintings of France in here, Paris particularly. Here's the Opera House in Paris, and he also has some little jokes that go from one page to another. Here's a dancing man that you see occasionally. This is the Place Vendôme. Here's a policeman chasing a thief, and there's the drunken man again. And here we see the cathedral at Notre Dame that has burned recently, and they're trying to rebuild it. And you see it in the rain. There are the little girls that'll be part of this story, and you can see some nuns in the background and people running in the rain to get out of the wet. And here's the Luxembourg Gardens. That's in another part of Paris. And you can see the garden there in front, the little girls. They've all bought balloons. And there's a pond with some little sailboats on it that children and even adults like to float in that pond. And in back of them is the Luxembourg Palace. Over here you see the cathedral at Sacré-Cœur up on the hill of Montmartre, and the girls ice skating in the snow. And there is the Paris Zoo as it used to be. Now it's a much better place, but back then it was a little basic. Now Madeline is set in a boarding school, which is a sort of school that used to be pretty common then, and that was that these 12 little girls would live in a boarding school, meaning they'd live in the school all week long. They'd sleep there. And they were looked after, in this case, by Miss Clavel, who's their teacher and who runs their little school. And they would go home on the weekends to see their parents. So, with all that explained to you, we will start the story. In an old house in Paris that was covered with vines lived 12 little girls in 2 straight lines. In 2 straight lines, they broke their bread, and that means they ate together. They brushed their teeth and went to bed. You can see all the girls sleep together in the same room. They smiled at the good, and here's a very nice lady feeding a horse, and they frowned at the bad. You can see there's a policeman chasing a thief, and you can see the little girls there. They're frowning. They're not very happy about this. And sometimes they were very sad. Here they are near a military hospital, and there's a soldier who's been wounded, and he's got his foot in a bandage, and he's on crutches. They left the house at 9:30. That means about 9:30 in the morning. In rain, there's Notre Dame again in the rain, or shine, and the Luxembourg Gardens, as we talked about before. The smallest one was Madeline, and you can see here that a tailor is measuring her to make some clothes for her school. She was not afraid of mice. You can see the other girls, they don't want to come near the mouse, but there's Madeline, she's not a bit afraid. She loved winter, snow, and ice, and they're all skating there. To the tiger in the zoo, Madeline just said, poo-poo, not poo-poo. And no one knew so well how to frighten Miss Clavel. And you can see here they are on a bridge going over the river, and all the girls are walking along the roadway, but there's Madeline up on the railing of the bridge, which must frighten Miss Clavel a lot. And you can see below here, there's a little tugboat, and there's a barge. And many years ago, I used to work on a barge in France. In the middle of one night, Miss Clavel turned on the light, and she knew something was not right. So she's gone up to the girl's room, you see. Little Madeline sat in bed. She cried and cried. Here she is. Her eyes were red. Well, Miss Clavel knows something very wrong. She's called Dr. Cohn. And soon after Dr. Cohn came, he ran for the phone. And he dialed Danton 66. Quick, he said to the nurse, it's an appendix. Oh, an appendix is a little part of your body that's inside, right over in here. And sometimes it gets infected and it can be very painful. And if they don't do something, it could be serious. So they usually have a little operation. They take your appendix out. Not terribly serious, but it's important. Everybody had to cry because they were a little frightened. She's sick and she's going off to the hospital to have her appendix out. Not a single eye was dry. Madeline was in his arm, in a blanket, safe and warm. In a car with a red light, they drove out into the night. She's in an ambulance there, and there's the Eiffel Tower at night, and you can see the clouds, and it looks very interesting. Madeline woke up 2 hours later in a room with flowers. People have sent her flowers already. Madeline soon ate and drank. There's the nurse with her breakfast. And on her bed, there was a crank. And this was back before there were electric circuits on the hospital bed. And so if they wanted to raise you up a little bit so you could sit up, they had to crank you up. And there's the crank, which would have been very exciting for her. And sometimes, you know how it is, you get bored and you're looking at the ceiling and you're imagining different shapes. Well, Madeline is doing that. And a crack on the ceiling had the habit of looking like a rabbit. Outside were birds and trees and sky, and so 10 days passed quickly by. These days you wouldn't spend 10 days in the hospital. You might not even spend one whole night, but back then things were a little different, and they wanted to keep you in the hospital for quite a while. One nice morning, Miss Clavel said, "Isn't this a fine day to visit?" Oh, here's the dancing man again. Madeline. And here are the girls. They're at a flower seller. They're all lined up. They're going to buy some flowers. Miss Clavel is giving the money to the flower seller. So they all have a flower to take to Madeline. It's a nice thing to do. Go to the hospital and visit a friend, and you take them flowers. Visitors from 2 to 4, said a sign upon the door. Tiptoeing with solemn face, with some flowers and a vase. You can see each girl has a flower, and they look very serious. They're not used to hospitals, and they're a little concerned for Madeline. And there's Miss Clavel with a vase in her hand. They can put the flowers in. In they walked and said, "Ah," when they saw the toys and the candy and the dollhouse from Papa. So her parents have, of course, already visited her. Here's some girls looking at a book, and there's the dollhouse. And there's a girl skipping rope, somebody with a doll. And here's one little girl playing with a crank on the bed. And there's Miss Clavel with the flowers in her hands. But the biggest surprise by far, on her stomach was a scar. And you can see the girls are just fascinated by this scar on her stomach where they had to do the operation. But you can see she's fine now. And she's, I think, a little proud of that scar, maybe. Goodbye, they said. We'll come again. And they walked out into the rain. Now look at the girls. They're looking very serious. Something is bothering them. There's Miss Clavel probably calling for I have to be a great big taxi to fill all of them in, but she's calling for a taxi, I think. They went home and broke their bread and brushed their teeth and went to bed. You can see Madeline's bed is empty there. And you can see, though, with all these, they're thinking about something. They don't look very happy. Something is bothering them. You can see the girls all lying in bed with their hands behind their heads, looking at the ceiling. In the middle of the night, Miss Clavel turned on the light and said, "Something is not right." And afraid of a disaster, Miss Clavel ran fast and faster. And she said, "Please, children, do tell me what is bothering you." And all the little girls cried, "Boo-hoo! We want to have our appendix out too." It looked like so much fun getting all the flowers and all the attention and all those toys. They don't realize that she'd been sick there for a while. It wasn't really much fun. Well, Miss Clavel says, "Good night, little girls. Thank the Lord you are well. And now go to sleep," said Miss Clavel. And she turned out the light and she closed the door. And that's all there is. There isn't any more. So that's Madeline by Ludwig Bemelmans. And I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope it made your day a little bit brighter if you can't get out and play so much today. Take care. Bye-bye.